middle class in this country over many decades. The workers and the unions are the ones responsible for sustaining the industry and creating the opportunities through decades of negotiations and getting the industry to transform for the next technological change to electrical vehicles. And it's really a once in a lifetime, a multi-generational situation. And this government has had to meet the challenges the U.S. government created through the Inflation Reduction Act auto provisions.
The commitments may be on jobs, maybe not on jobs, but there's clearly a confusion in the government and between the companies as to how many taxpayer-funded foreign replacement workers are coming in and how many jobs will actually go to good unionized jobs. We have an unemployment rate in Windsor of 7%. The governments have invested and are ready for the training. We did this in Halifax with a shipbuilding contract, with a $30 billion shipbuilding contract, the community college, the industry, everyone. All that training was done in Canada for Canadian workers. And that's what everyone expected with these contracts. So it's shocking that the Liberal government seems to be hiding their incompetence in these contracts. And this is the reason we've put it forward. Canadians deserve to know how their money is being spent and if it's being spent for jobs, for replacement workers from outside of Canada, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Perkins. I see as well, Mr. Johns and Mr. Kuzmierczuk, you have your hands up. I've added you to the speaking order. Mr. Berthold, go ahead, please. Welcome to Ogo.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. $50 billion of public money, that's $3,000
And while doing so, they have fallen short on the disclosure and transparency that exist in the U.S. government's plan, which is why we're supporting this motion. And a national auto strategy, something the NDP has called for 2 decades, would have provided that transparency and accountability this government has decided to ignore. So over the past 2 weeks, from a revelation from the South Korean ambassador that 1,600 foreign workers from South Korea were coming to help build and operate the plant, there have been many questions that this government has refused to answer. From last Monday, the government said it was 1 job. Then on Tuesday, 100 jobs. Then on Thursday, it was 900 jobs, etc. The confusion has damaged public trust and sowed division among the various unions and in communities.
We do approve the NDP amendment. We will be supporting the NDP amendment.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Scheer.
Not shocked at that. I just want to reinforce a point that my colleague, Mr. Jones, said. This is about protecting the interests of taxpayers and safeguarding their hard-earned money. The idea that it's somehow the nuclear option to report this to the House, I just utterly reject that. It's procedurally what that would mean is that the House would be advised, should the government fail to abide by this duly constituted, properly passed motion in the event that the committee adopts it, there needs to be a what if. If the government looks at this motion and says, okay, well, the committee's asked for something and we can just ignore it, well, then they will. They've done that in the past. The reporting mechanism is very straightforward. It would just inform the House that an order of the committee is being ignored. It would then be up to the House as to whether or not to adopt and concur in that report, at which point the powers of Parliament kick in. And that's really the crux of this matter. In order for the government to be forced to do something, it needs to be elevated to that level. Otherwise, we would have to, if we adopt this amendment, what the NDP member is suggesting is that this committee then would have to become seized with this issue again. Whereas the genius behind this motion is that it gets it all done in one step. It orders the production and includes a mechanism that if the will of the committee is not respected by the government, that there's then an enforcement mechanism to compel them to do so. Otherwise, this would just be kind of an expression of opinion with no actual follow-up. And the reason why that's important is because it's not like Parliament is somehow just a backdrop for the Prime Minister. It's not just a set in which he plays his role. We're not extras in his movie or in his productions. We have a constitutional duty to hold the government to account. That's the purpose. That's why we're all here. We're not here, just to enjoy the November weather in Ottawa. We're here to do a job. We're here to pour through the books, bring out the magnifying glasses, and go through every detail. And that is our role. So this isn't just wanting to get a few exchanges of emails from somebody. These are multi-billion-dollar contracts that the government seems to have failed to ensure protection for Canadian workers. It's hard to think, other than national security issues, it's hard to think of other types of issues that would rise to the level of importance for parliamentarians. Pouring through the books to identify how tax dollars is being spent and the impact on Canadian workers is, top 2 or 3 jobs that members of Parliament could even think of having to do throughout the parliamentary day. So I don't see why. I don't see the problem in reporting it back to the House. In fact, I see the problem if we don't do that, because then we'll likely be back here in a few weeks. Let's just take that off the table. Let's just think of every possible scenario to get a one-stop shopping type of motion to ensure not only do we pass this motion compelling documents, but there's actually an enforcement mechanism to ensure the government respects the democratic will of this committee.
Chair, just a point of order. I wonder if Mr. Johns can clarify. I understand him to have moved an amendment, so I want to clarify. My understanding, just looking at the motion, would be that his amendment proposes to remove Section G. Is the amendment to remove Section G, or is it something else, just so we know what's on the table?